And here we go.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! I-N-D-Y!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming back to you here on this Tuesday, October number 3. Hope you're enjoying the fall. It's not exactly feeling like fall out there yesterday. 86 degrees, which I'm cool with. I'll take it as long as it lasts. I'm much more a fan of 80-degree weather than 30-degree weather. So I am not complaining. I hope everybody's doing well. Appreciate everybody jumping up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Kent, Doug, Jamie, Pete, 5 lefts. Don't forget, Indiana Sports Beat Radio is powered by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymorehonda.com and get more to your door with the best in new and used prices on vehicles. For those of you looking for one, although tough to find right now. Gritty jumping on. Happy birthday to her sister. So happy birthday, Sister Gritty. Also, don't forget the Wild Food Group. Also brought to you, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the family of restaurants like Chop Shop, Market and Table, where you will find Don Fisher each and every Wednesday night. Not this Wednesday, I believe. I'm going to have to check with Don because this is a bye week. Indiana does not play this week in football, so therefore I believe that does not happen, but let me check to make sure. I don't want to say that. Of course, Indiana going into this bye week after firing their offensive coordinator, Walt Bell. The offense, with good reason, the offense was pathetic. I'm not sure that's completely his fault, but it's not good at IU, and I think that they're just putting Band-Aids on leaks in the Titanic is basically how I feel. I mean, it's like, oh, let's slap another Band-Aid on this leak on the Titanic. Man, I don't think you can stop the water that's coming in. So a lot going down there. But we'll see. Indiana will travel to Ann Arbor, Michigan after their bye week. And not only that, Fox has decided to make that their showcase. It's a big noon kickoff game against Michigan. Not sure why they chose that one. It's a potential blowout for Michigan. Weird how they choose things, but they do what they do. Jay Minton says, rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, someone wrote. Yeah. I just thought of that yesterday. That just came out of my mouth, the slapping a Band-Aid. I'm like, man, that's like slapping a Band-Aid on the Titanic. I'm like, it's not, I don't, but at this point, what do you do? If you're Indiana, you're in mid-season. It's going to be, you're traveling to Michigan. I don't know. Everyone thought that they had all these winnable games, and with the talent, I agreed early on, but now I hate to say I'm fearful that there might be two. Michigan State didn't win, but they played well. That's the best that they probably played. Their last week was the best that they probably played this season. Steven says, hey, Jim, why do you always talk bad about IU football? I mean, it's like you've got a vendetta against the coach. I watched the last 2 weeks, and you spent half your show on talking bad about IU football. I don't know that I'm talking bad about it. I'm just saying what it is. Am I supposed to lie? I'm not trying to. I don't want to. Hey, I wish they were winning. And we were talking about beating teams that they made, that they were successful at Louisville, that they did not go to Maryland and get destroyed. It's not my goal. I say that all the time. Winning is always better. It's more fun to talk about. What am I supposed to say? I'm sorry. This is not I'm not paid by IU. This is not an IU show that we wave the pom-poms. That's not me. I'm not a shtick guy. I'm not going to sit here and shake bells or whatever. Man, I say what it is. I think that I'm pretty neutral. I try to be completely neutral, as a matter of fact. When things are good, hey, I talked about going into the season, I had high hopes. Now, I disagree with things. I still think it should have been Sorsby, and it may end up being Sorsby at the quarterback. But I find that I'm glad you're with us, Stephen, but I have to disagree with you. And I don't know that that's what you've said is accurate. I assure you that is never my goal. That does not, because that would not, that's not great anything. It's not good radio. It's not good anything. I'm just, thank you, Gritty. And thank you, Five Lefts. I appreciate it. Guys. Yeah, that's not the goal, but I mean, what do you say about that? I mean, Stephen, I'd love to hear what should I say? How should I be addressing that situation? You know, I'll talk about Purdue just as well. Purdue is a program that I was surprised. Illinois is horrible. And they had a good season last year, and they're horrible this year. Probably partly due to the loss of Ryan Walters as coach, as their head of defense, who's now over Purdue. Purdue's been terrible this year. So the last game, they scored 44 points in a big win. I don't try to hate on anybody. That I assure you. I try to deliver what is just accurate. And if I fail at that, well, then I apologize. But that's never the goal. As I said, football or Indiana is part of the big noon kickoff on Fox in Ann Arbor when they resume play next week. And so Indiana gets the opportunity to heal up whatever injuries you've got, especially people like Josh Henderson, who they've lost and I'm sure have been missing. Josh, a big part of what they try to do, even though the running game has not been great. Hopefully that changes under the change at offensive coordinator. I'm not sure what we'll see different. I'm not sure how much different we can see. I'm wondering if they're going to change quarterbacks. I really am. With the benching of Taven Jackson, is that a lesson that they were trying to send him to change your mindset? Or Brendan Sorsby is not just a backup. I still think that he may be the better quarterback right now. And that doesn't mean that Tava Jackson doesn't become a great quarterback. Just not right now. Passing not quite there. As far as accuracy, Brendan Sorsby is a great opportunity. And then you've got Dexter Williams in the wings, who is hoping to come back at some point. And that was thought to be around midseason. So we'll have to find out where he is. But what does that do? Because he's not a passing quarterback. He gave Indiana great success against Michigan State last year, and that shocker that I'm still shocked at that they were able to win. But then they were also leading against Purdue when he went down. But he is a complete running quarterback, and that did change Indiana's game last year. But we'll see on that. Oh, I'm trying to read these messages at the same time. I'll have to do that in the break. But Indiana moving forward on that. Hoosier Hysteria coming up is around the corner, by the way. October 20th. That's not that far away. Of course, this is October 3rd, so we're just looking at a couple, 2.5 weeks, something like that. Big Ten Media Day is October 9th and 10th. We'll be up in Minnesota doing the show from there. And as usual, we should have Coach Mike Woodson and whichever players they bring. If they bring two, I'm going to assume that will be Xavier and Trey Galloway. But that's just my guess. Those are the two leaders of the team. I'm trying to think if last year they just took two players. So I think the women might have taken three. I can't recall for sure, but yeah, Indiana just took two. They took Grace Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis. So we'll see how that works out. But that's coming up as well, which means basketball season is around the corner. Bob says that, or rather, Five Left's Cooper Flagg has canceled his visit to Kansas. He thinks that they will throw everything at McNeely now. He always thought Cooper was their first choice, but isn't Cooper Flagg a guard? I can't recall because I know he's not really on him very much. But we've got to take a break. We'll come back and continue the discussion on the basketball side of things. Hope everybody's doing well. We appreciate everybody listening wherever you are, however you're listening, whether you're on 97.7 The Ref on ESPN down in Evansville, 1380 The Fan, Fort Wayne sports station, 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, WJOB, the voice of the region in Hammond and Chicago, and, of course, 89.1 in Marengo, or across the globe on YouTube. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Sorry, I'm not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Give some expectations for how I can be better. I'm a little confused by that, and I'm really trying to seriously understand. It would just be nice for you to give some expectations about how you can be better and how we can get better as the season goes along. Well, again, if you want me to tell the truth, I don't expect them to get much better. How they can get better? They can get better because Rod Carey may have enough coaching experience to help Tom, because Tom needs solid coordinators around him. They can get better by the line blocking, opening holes, protecting the quarterback. A quarterback that is more accurate. That's how you get better. I mean, you connect on plays.
All right, Jim, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this beautiful Tuesday, October 3rd, and Mike DeCourcy set to join us. I believe he is ready to go. He is trying to get in there. I think he's having a connection issue at the moment, but we'll see. There we go. The beautiful Mike DeCourcy. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I am fine. Just getting chastised a little bit. Someone thought that I was too negative towards IU football, and I'm like, well, that's never my goal. I said, I'm just trying to say what I see, what's going on, and what it is. And
I don't mean to be blunt here, but how is it possible to be too negative on IU football right now?
I agree. I think I try not to be too negative as a matter.
Well, I mean, you read the final score and is that making you too negative? I don't know. I would be curious as to the listeners' viewpoint on what is positive at this point. It's really a struggle.
It is, and I think that there's just been too many bad decisions that have already been made, and maybe continued decisions on player development or whatever. They benched Taven Jackson. I'd heard Sorsby was the guy that from inside that everyone thought was going to be the guy, but that doesn't matter. Now they go to Michigan next time, and they'll get an opportunity to be on Fox's big noon kickoff. And I'm like, whew, that could be bad up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with 110,000 people. I've been there. That is the loudest outdoor place I have ever been, without question. It is, because it's not only is it 110,000 people, which that makes it enough. It's a complete bowl, and it's below grade. And I don't know if that helps with that, but I was just, when I was there I had to cup my hands to yell into my roommate's ear to tell him something. It was crazy. How's Mike DeCourcy doing?
I'm doing well. I've been to a lot of the great stadiums in college football, but I've not been to the Big House. None of the teams I covered ever had the occasion to be there. I've been to Ann Arbor for basketball multiple times, off season and in season, but I've never been to a football game there. I got to rectify that. That's got to be a bucket list deal.
I've been fortunate. I've been to Notre Dame, and I went to Notre Dame when it was the old stadium.
Oh yeah, I did.
You'll see the touchdown Jesus, and I'm still, even though I'm not a Notre Dame fan, I am furious that when they put that extra upper deck on, that they did not just cut out the cutout. I'm like, how do you not think of that? Because that was wild, sitting in that stadium. You could always just look over, and there's touchdowns Jesus just looming over you, and you can't see that anymore from the stadium. And unless you can
still see it from the press box. I think you can still, and since they redid the stadium, I've only been in the press box. So I can still see it there. But
this was 1991, Mike.
I was there twice in the 80s. when I was covering Penn State. So I know the old stadium, what it was like, and they kicked the heck out of Penn State when I was covering them there. They really did a number on Penn State. Alan Pinkett went for a zillion yards, but it was a really cool place to watch a game, and it still really is. I mean, but I did, I've not been down there to not be able to see that. But you're right. The architects should have come in with the drawing and said, okay, here's how we're going to keep this intact.
That's so dumb. That's just one of the things I'm like, no, you did not. You did not do that. Not only is it a cool place to go, it's like visiting a museum in a number of ways. And I took my daughter up there a few years ago. We just went up as a fan. They were playing Louisville, and walking around, they have people stationed all over the place. Welcome to Notre Dame. Can I help you? Welcome to I'm serious. I'm talking out on the walkways everywhere, because it is a museum of sorts. You go to the grotto, you go inside I don't know what it is, the library where we just happened to be inside when the bagpipers started playing, and the cathedral. My God, it is a museum. That is definitely a bucket list place for people to see a game, period. Now, I'll tell you this, when you get inside to sit down, you are not going to be happy sitting on that 2x6 piece of wood, because that is, unless they have changed it since then, that's what I was sat on. 2x6 piece of wood, and the seats were about that wide. But a great place to go. And they had, this was the old press box too. They had the best hot dogs that I've ever had. I always rank their hot dogs number one. So, but I've not been to Penn State. That's a stadium that I have not been able to get to yet.
I've been there more than once, let me tell you. I covered them for 9 years. So I was at Penn State an awful lot. And it's a Happy Valley State College, University Park, beautiful place. It really is lovely, especially right around now. This is prime time to be there. If you catch a good weather weekend, no rain and such. Not very many better places to go for a football weekend than State College, I will say. I spent 9 consecutive autumns up there, and it is a beautiful place. There's no doubt about it. I've not been back in 30 years. I covered the team from 1984 to 1992, and I've not been back in 30 years. And I told my wife that one of these days I want to get back there. I want to see what it looks like now, what it feels like now with James Franklin as head coach, what the town looks like. It's just, I spent so much time up there for the better part of 9 years.
Big IU connection there. The sports information, Greg, daggone it, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. The football sports information director, super great guy. Greg was here at IU, started his career here at IU, but he was a Penn State guy. And more importantly, their athletics director, he's a guy named Pat Kraft. Do some Wikipedia on Pat Kraft, and you'll see he's a former Indiana football player, in addition to being an athletics director at, I don't know where else, Temple, before that, but he's at Penn State now, and that's a whole different discussion.
Gregory Kincaid is the man you're looking.
Greg Kincaid. Oh my gosh, Greg, what a great guy. But yeah, Indiana, and that's another thing. Indiana said, guys, Arizona's top basketball SID is from Indiana.
Alabama?
No, Arizona.
No, I was going to say Alabama also has an IU, former IU guy.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did not know that one.
Yes.
I did not know that. I'll have to look that one up. Then there's Memphis. They have their basketball SID is from IU as well. So Indiana, they talk a lot about the media school. These guys coming out of this sports information directors, that's a tree right there. A nice tree, as a matter of fact. But how are things going for Mike?
I'm doing fine. Steelers stink, and Liverpool got a game stolen from them. But have you seen this? This is why I've been against instant replay since it was introduced to all professional sports, probably starting with the NFL, because for all the mistakes it might correct, it also introduces mistakes that it shouldn't. And so I've always been against it. And Liverpool had a goal ruled offside that was on replay, clearly onside. And so the ESPN reporter said that the replay review thought that the goal had been ruled onside. And so when they went to them, they said, yeah, it's all good. so it was wiped out. So that's replay review for you, folks. I am not a fan and remain not a fan. And that was another example of why I don't like it. And it slows down the games we watch. It introduces maybe not as many mistakes as it correct, but any mistakes it introduces, given that it's supposed to introduce perfection into the game, is too many. So I'd rather just watch the game if a touchdown goes across the line and they call it a touchdown on the field, I'd like to celebrate right there and then and not say, okay, is that good? Okay, can now I be happy? Okay, thank you. That I hate that about what we do with replay. So I'm one more example of why I loathe the replay systems in all sports.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to. They screwed it up, no doubt. But that's just human stupidity.
But that's what I'm saying. As long as there's humans involved, you're going to make mistakes. So why not just make the ones on the field, and then we can follow the spontaneity of sports, which is what we watch for. If we wanted to watch something that's scripted, we'd watch The Godfather again. Never gets old. But we watch sports to be surprised, and too often when we're surprised, we're feel that we're hung in suspended animation there until our surprise is confirmed, and by that time, it's not really as much fun as it was.
Absolutely, of course. Not breaking news to you. Indiana's offensive coordinator Walt Bell was let go after last week's shellacking in College Park, which was not a surprise. Indiana had looked good early on against I guess you'd say probably a rusty Ohio State team. Then they had games against your non-conference opponents, the Indiana State, where you can beat up on but when things got back to reality, it's just I've always thought that they had the talent, and I've said this all year. So this is another positive thing I've said. I think and thought that they had the talent to have won 6-7 games with the Big Ten the way it has been, because it has not been good. I mean, Purdue had been awful before this week. Illinois is hot garbage. Michigan State, other than they showed a little bit this week, but other than that, Minnesota, who I thought, then they have a fourth quarter collapse. So many, the Big Ten is just not strong, not deep as it normally is.
Yes.
Strong at the top, very
it
strong.
Is, and that's where a big problem for the Hoosiers stands, in that 3 of their next 4 are against teams. 2 of them are against teams that are top 10. Wisconsin, I don't think they may still be sort of wrestling with their identity a little bit with the coaching change, but they're
getting better
football. So it's not a good place for the Hoosiers to be in their schedule to be struggling the way they did. I look back at that Louisville game, and it feels like a game that really was a turning point for them, because if they'd won that, they'd be in so much better shape than they are now. And having to go to Michigan now, and I think a lot will ride on the Rutgers game. Rutgers has had good moments, but they've been pushed around a bit too. I mean, Michigan really did a number on them. So that's an opportunity for IU to get themselves righted a little bit, and put themselves in a position where if they can win that and then close out well, that it won't have been a disastrous season. So I think that home game against Rutgers on October 21st, noon kickoff, really becomes a huge one for IU.
The Big Ten, speaking of the Big Ten, they are very strong at the top. And Georgia remains number one. And I have an issue with that. Every other team right now is being affected in the rankings by how they play. If they play poorly, somebody has dropped and moved on. Not Georgia. They have not looked good at all. Yes, they've won, but man, they are getting by average teams, yet they remain ranked the number one team. That is such a perception BS, because everyone came into the season thinking, oh, it's going to be Georgia. And they're continue to not be disimpressed enough. Well, I am disimpressed. As a matter of fact, I think Washington's the number one team in the country. I love Washington. I love what they're doing. But it doesn't have to be Washington. USC's not having a bad year. And yet they're down there low, and I'm like, that's baloney. It's all perception, and I don't like it. Yeah, it should be better. I mean, they need to be moved.
Yeah, that's the poll mentality, Jim. And I voted. I probably have told this story here before because I've told it many times. I voted for 2 or 3 years in the men's basketball poll in the early 90s. And it was, first of all, it was a lot of work for something that they don't pay you for. I got to the point where it's like, why am I not getting compensated for this? Because it's a lot of work to keep track and to do it right. And then you're just banging your head up against this poll mentality crap. And it's like, well, I'm not. I knew there were people out there who didn't follow the sport as closely as I did, whose vote counted as much. So that was dumb. And so I got to the point that I in 1990, I think it was, or 91, I think it was 90. LaSalle was like 20 whatever and 1, probably at the start of February. So I started voting them number 1, and it wasn't a great year for teams. There weren't a lot of great teams that year. And Vegas wasn't playing great yet. They ultimately became a great team and won the national championship. But they weren't playing great, and they weren't in a very good league. So they weren't a clear number 1 or anything like that at that point. And so I was voting LaSalle number 1, and no one else was paying any attention to the fact that LaSalle was going out clobbering teams because they were in a league that wasn't super high. And I got so frustrated with it that I finally just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And then I think before the 91 season or the 92 season, the AP came to me and said, it's not we're taking the vote away because it's not your turn to do it. We're giving it to the other person who covers Pitt. And I was like, wait, it's not my turn. That's how this works. So I swore I would never vote again. And I was asked multiple times over the years and said no. And I think that I've been so critical of the polls in the decades since that now they know not to pick up the phone. But it's just the whole poll mentality is antithetical to logic. It's like, if you're number 1, we can't move you no matter how you play. But if you're number 2, we can move you if you stink in a game, even if you don't lose it. So it's just that's why I pay no attention to them, Jim. And I pay no attention to the basketball polls either, even though I cover them. That's one of the things that people are surprised by. I cover college basketball essentially 365 days, not the way I used to with me doing soccer and NFL and college football and such in the off season. But it's still top of mind 365 days a year. If you ask me what's happening on January 1st in the polls, I have no idea. I don't look at them. There's so much other information you can find out there about who's good and who's not between Ken Palm and all the other analytic things and my bracket and the other bracket projectors. And there's so many other ways to find out who's good that the poll is useless. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited about next college football season, because the polls won't really matter that much anymore. It will be about whether you win a championship. If you win a championship, if you're in the Big Ten, you win a championship, you're getting to play for the national title. And that's how it should be. in college football, just like all the other sports.
Absolutely. And that to me is going to be fun because these guys like Georgia, who I'm not claiming they're not a good football team,
right?
But they can lose earlier. And that is going to help determine true champions. There are just teams out there that, like the ones I mentioned, especially the Pac-12 teams, I think there is a Pac-12 bias because they play late. A lot of people don't watch them. Don't stay up start watching a game at 10:30 at night. I do if it's Washington or USC or any of those teams. And how about it was USC and Colorado who had a noon Eastern time start last week, which meant 10 a.m. in Boulder, Colorado. I'm like, what the hell? First of all, why would they agree to that? They don't need that. And why would anybody do that to them? That's just, I think that's ridiculous.
Well, it's television ratings, and the games that Colorado has been involved in with Deion Sanders as head coach have done spectacularly well. I've not seen a rating on that game yet, but every other game that he's been involved in has rated spectacularly. So that's why people are watching, and they want to put their biggest games in that noon window. And so you have the opportunity to get Deion and USC with Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman winner. Hey, it's good for Caleb Williams, too, because all his Wendy's commercials get to be featured in a game that gets more eyeballs. And so that's good for his exposure as well. He's gotten quite a bit of run off his Heisman trophy. It's getting to the point now, honestly, Jim, where if you win the Heisman, you should go back to college because you might make more money in Wendy's commercials and the other sponsors, Dr. Pepper. You might make more money in those ads than you might in the NFL.
Speaking of the Heisman, not to mention another publication, especially one that let our good friend Bob Kravitz go, but The Athletic has a straw Heisman poll. Last week was the first week, and Michael Penix was number one. This week it's Caleb Williams, but it looks like RC's telling us it's time for a break. So let me take a quick break, and we'll come back and continue the Heisman discussion. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network with us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
And
when we get back, I pay attention.
When we get back, Jim, you'll have to break in like 15 minutes for Fort Wayne, just so you know.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
No problem.
Oh, will you go to Big Ten Media Day?
Yeah.
I can't. I was like, oh my God, that's next week.
Yeah.
I was looking at my phone. I'm like, okay, I'm staying where? It's like, did I make my reservations? Did I get my flight? What, man, next year's Big Ten Media Day. I wonder where they will have that.
I don't know. Where is the tournament next year? Is it back in Chicago? I'd have to look that up.
Me too. You know what? I would bet, unless it is the reason not to, with all the new teams coming in, Chicago is the place that they would do it as kind of the Big Ten headquarters type of thing. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of the hotel deal.
All right, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Tuesday, October 3. Appreciate you being with us. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and the Big Ten Network along here with me as usual on this Tuesday. Derek says, Jim, I've said for years, basketball and football both, that rankings shouldn't start until mid-season. That way you can base things on not from the previous year. Yeah, that would make complete – I wouldn't go that far. I'd wait a couple of weeks in at least. But
he's not – but here's the thing. What he's not understanding is it has nothing to do with being accurate. It has everything to do with the AP selling its wire service. That's all it's about. It's really all it's about. And so
everybody,
yes, he's right that it would produce better and more efficient rankings. But since it has nothing to do with that, that's why it works how it works.
Yep. And well, it's just like the way too – as soon as the season's over – the way too early top 25. I'm like, get the hell out of here with that. I go, the teams you're putting in, if it's a basketball team, may not have half of those guys on the roster next year.
Let me tell you something. First of all, we do that at Sporting News, and we do it for one reason only. It gets read. It gets people want to see it.
You're
so
right.
we give the people what they want. We're not going to sell them liver. We're going to sell them cheeseburgers, so to speak.
Right.
If they want it, we're gonna give it to them. That's first, and then second of all, you'd be surprised how accurate we are. I mean, especially based on what you're saying. We've been in the ballpark. I mean, you don't always project the national champion and such, but you'd be surprised at how often I and others who do this are in the territory with the teams that. In terms of having good years after they were top 5, top 10 in the way too early top 25s. And those things that they are literally generated before the Final Four. I mean, not before the Final Four, before the championship game. I'm in Houston or wherever, and one of the things I've got to get done before the ball goes in the air is the next year's top 25. So it's we have to have that ready to roll. I think maybe this year we might even have run it on Championship Monday. I can't remember, but we're closer to reality than you'd think. And they don't usually deviate that much from mine to, I don't know, Jeff Goodman's or Andy Katz's or Seth Davis or whoever does them. There's some that are a little bit different, but it's not that hard if you know the game to at least be in the ballpark. And maybe some are a little better than others or whatever, but if you follow the game as closely as we do, you'd be surprised at how you can get a read on what's going to happen.
Yeah, and so this year's basketball, who's going to be in the Final Four?
I think Kansas will be there. I don't think they'll win the championship. I think Michigan State will be there. Really? I think those two teams, I think Duke has a great chance. And I am higher on Kentucky than most of my colleagues. That's one where if you look at some of the other top 25s now, some of them are even like the regular preseason, not the way too early. Blue ribbons out. The almanac that's put together by the field of 68 people is out. I think they are a little lower on Kentucky than I am because there's this mentality now that you have to be experienced to win. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think Duke was an injury away from being a deep run last year. Last year's Florida Atlantic team that went so far, they weren't experienced. They had one super veteran guy. Their big guy was a fifth-year senior, I think. But most of their players were sophomores and juniors. So you can win with younger players still. You don't have to be 25 or 26. It's an advantage in the COVID era to have those really older guys. But I don't think that it didn't stop Duke from winning the ACC last year. They were largely freshmen. They had some experience, but they were largely freshmen. But that's Kentucky this year. They're very talented. But they have some experience. And so I think they're top 10 good.
It's certainly going to be something to look forward to. The Big Ten, of course, you mentioned Michigan State. So you did not mention Purdue.
Yeah.
Is that because Purdue just has a penchant for not being able to finish in the tournament. They've gotten close. Was it 2016? I think that
2019.
they made that
2019. They were one free throw away.
But this year they have coming back what is without question a top 4 team. The team is going to be ranked in the top 4.
They're going to have a great
year. There's no
year.
way not to.
They're going to have a fantastic year. But
if they don't reach the Final Four, is it successful with the talent that they have and had?
Depends on how it goes. But that you just said the talent. That's the difference. They don't have as much talent as the other teams. They have good players, but usually what gets you to the destiny, to Final Four or to national championship, usually what gets you there is having superior talent. They need to be well organized. They need to be well coached, but it starts with the talent. And that's been that people look at Purdue and look past the fact that most of the time they're playing with 3- and 4-star guys, and somebody else is bringing 2 5-stars out there, 2 projected lottery picks or whatever, and that makes a difference. Now that hasn't happened in the games, obviously, against North Texas or against St. Peter's or FDU. That has not been a talent issue. I've discussed this on many occasions. I believe that there's a mentality thing there, that they have to go into those games with a competitive arrogance that they haven't carried into those games. The same approach that Carolina took when they played St. Peter's. The same. You have to go into those games saying, we're not afraid of you or the moment. We are going to beat you because we're better. We are much better. We are much more talented. What we do, you can't stop. And I think they played a little eggshelly, so to speak, in the game against FDU. You could see the tension. And I think some of that came from being freshmen.
Yeah, freshmen. Yeah.
That was a big part of it. I think another part of it was that when things started to work for them, they didn't say, okay, like Fletcher's on today. It's been 2 months since Fletcher's had a day. He was competing his tail off, Fletcher Lawyer, all the way through February and early March, but he wasn't shooting the ball well. But on that day, he should have gotten more shots than he did. And the fact that he didn't was costly to them. The veteran players tried to take the moment, and that was good in the sense that they wanted to try to do it, but it was not so good in the sense that they didn't do it. They dropped the moment. So I think they have to go into those games knowing that they can win. Hey, they beat Texas in the second round last 2022. That was a tough win. That Texas team was loaded. They had terrific players, and they stood up to that and played well and won the game. And then they didn't carry that into the game against FDU. Excuse me, not FDU, St. Peter's. They didn't carry that in. And when they got the game back in their hands, and they got both of those games back in their hands, they did not follow through. Like, okay, we're good now. We've got now we've got the game back. We got to close this down. And I thought that one of the things that Matt needs to do in those moments is he needs to coach the moment and not the season. He like the St. Peter's game. It was a really tough day for Zach Edey with the way that St. Peter's was playing. It was really tough for him to be effective. He shouldn't have rotated back in the game when Travion got tired. They should have just said, doesn't matter what we've always done. Let's do what's working today. Travion's out. Let's play Caleb first, play small. We'll look at them eye to eye, and we're tougher and we're better. And that's what they should have done. And instead they went to Zach, and that lead that they had built, 6 points, I think, dissipated. Those are the things that they have to do to get through those games. And I think they will. I think that going through this several times has taught them how to deal with it now. And they've got more experienced players. They've got guards now who've been through that. And I think having Roosevelt Colvin will help them as well. I think having that extra spark, that extra dynamism is going to help them.
Speaking of football and Pittsburgh, I guess we mentioned earlier, Matt Canada has just never had. It just seems like he can't find success for some reason. LSU he's there for one season and gone. And man, he's just not working in Pittsburgh. And it's weird to see a team like Pittsburgh, who has just always been able to find a modicum of success no matter what, having those problems. But you've got a quarterback that's hurt, possibly. So that can't be fun for any Steeler fan.
Well, the thing I was in a meeting for our NFL people 2 weeks ago, and they said, you know, they wanted to do a piece on the Steelers offense and why it's not working. I think this was before the Las Vegas game, and so I said I'll look at that. And I you know, when Matt Canada was hired, I remembered him for two things. One, having a great year at Pitt in 2016 as the offensive coordinator at Pitt, and then going immediately from that to a really high dollar, high profile appointment as OC at LSU, and failing to the point where even Ed Orgeron thought he couldn't coach.
That's bad, and that's really bad.
Yes, and that's those are the two things I remembered him for. So when I went back and looked at it, and I went through every year of him as a college offensive coordinator. Remember, he had no NFL OC experience when the Steelers hired him to be their quarterback's coach. And so I went through every college season that he had. And he averaged, I believe the number was 58th in the country in scoring offense. I believe that was the number that came up with in his time. And we're talking about, this is not a small sample size. We're talking about NC State and Northern Illinois and Pitt and LSU and Maryland. He averaged 58th, and he had 2 seasons in the top 30. One of them was a top 10 at Pitt, and 3 seasons outside the top 80. So how does that guy get the Steelers job in the first place, Jim? He didn't have the resume for it. I don't understand how
Pittsburgh. That's a huge question at Pittsburgh, because that is a place that, man, they don't make many coaching mistakes. They have guys. What was the guy's name that was actually from Louisville, who was the defensive coordinator for 1,000 years till he was 70? Dick LeBeau. Dick LeBeau. Do you know he was from Louisville?
I did not know that.
Yes, still has his daughters live there, I believe. But Dick LeBeau was a defensive coordinator into his 70s.
Oh, man,
and doing and kicking people's butts.
Yes, he was great. One thing that they've not done really exceptionally well, Jim, is they've not hired, since LeBeau left, they've not done a great job with hiring coordinators. There's a lot of theories about why that is, but Matt, he was a solid at best college offensive coordinator, and how that guy gets one of the prime jobs in the highest league in the world, I don't know. I'm still really at a loss for that, and he's holding that job against numbers that are just overwhelming. They're the only team that has not had a 400-yard offensive output game, 400 yards. The only team in the NFL that's not had one since the start of the 2021 season. Every other team in the league has had at least 3, and they've had 0.
We've got another minute. And speaking of offensive coordinators, Indiana just let theirs go and replaced him with Rod Carey, who was on staff last year, took over offensive line duties. And it just seems like to me, I've said this, and this is why some people, I'm not trying to be negative, but they're just putting Band-Aids on the Titanic. This is the Titanic. This is that big old hole, and you're putting Band-Aids on this thing. It's not stopping, man. This ship is going down.
Well, I guess that's where the idea was gotten that you've been negative. It is a problem, but as I said, they didn't score against Louisville. They got 2 touchdowns against Louisville. Louisville's not a great defense. They're fine. It's a good football team. They're gonna do well in the ACC. They got a big win last weekend, Friday night against NC State, but they're not an overwhelming defense. And for a Big Ten offense to only score 14 points, it's not good enough. So and then to go to Maryland and do what they did, they needed to change. So it's better to do this than to do what, say, the Steelers are doing and just say, oh, we're good, we're fine. Just got to do better. It's better to realize that you maybe made a mistake and try to correct it. But again, I don't think it's going to make a difference at Michigan. Michigan is on a roll right now. They're playing tremendous football. But if they try to learn from their experience at Michigan, I think that Rutgers game is the one where they got to come out and show that making a coordinator change made a difference in how they approach offense.
Well, what's up next for you, sir?
I am working on a project about baseball that will probably appear in the middle of the month. I've done these 2 of the last 3 years, sort of historical looks at teams from the past, and I've got one that I'm coming up with, and it's going to be a fun piece about some moments in baseball history that everybody remembers, but there's a lot more behind them than people realize.
Make sure you check that out from the Sporting News. Make sure you're following Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and his job with the Big Ten Network about to kick in gear, baby. We're a week away. We'll see you up in Minneapolis. And actually, that'll be a Monday and a Tuesday. So hopefully we can have you on live up there, hopefully.
Live is preferable to the alternative, absolutely.
Much more fun, and as long as we don't interrupt anything with you. But, brother, go out and have yourself a good day, and we'll see you in Minneapolis.
Sounds great, Jim.
Mike DeCourcy joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got more coming up in the next hour. Chronic Hoosier, Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times as well. We'll be back right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Wrong one. Oh, there it is. Boom, shakalaka laka la, boom, shakalaka laka, boom, shakalaka laka, boom.
All right, Jim. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Tuesday, October 3rd. Really appreciate you being with us. Hope you're having a great day. How about this weather, man? It is incredible. Incredible. Hopefully, Indiana football on a bye week. Hopefully, they can get healed up and go to Ann Arbor and make a good showing. big question is someone mentioned, and I forgot about it until I was watching the Michigan game earlier this year. Jack Tuttle, former Indiana quarterback, Jack Tuttle is the backup at Michigan. I saw him play one play because he ran a play and ran out of bounds. He got hit, laid out of bounds, and so they took him for examination. He wanted to come back in, but didn't get back in that game. But he's had some opportunities, and you can believe you me, Jim Harbaugh will make sure that Jack Tuttle plays in this game. You can take that one to the bank. Now that'll be a little game inside of the game there, and it would be interesting to see. Herbal pointing out Louisville has Notre Dame this weekend. They'll have their work cut out for them. Yeah, they will. And I guarantee you that is a special game for Jeff Brom. I've just always thought, and I know the Louisville connection, but I guarantee you Notre Dame has to be in there for him. Maybe it's not anymore, but it used to be, because he came up through the Catholic system in Louisville. He went to Louisville Trinity High School, where he won multiple state titles, and then going on to play for Louisville. And Louisville has a connection to Notre Dame. There's just this, it used to, back in the day, it was a solid Catholic community. Flagey High School, Paul Horning, the Golden Boy, one of their greatest ever athletes, is from Louisville. So there's a weird connection with them, but man, that's a big game for them. They're undefeated in the ACC, and while they have thoughts of playing for an ACC championship, but they've got their work cut out for them, because not only do they play Notre Dame, I'm assuming they're still in the same division as Clemson, and they have to play Clemson. So we'll see how that turns out. I mentioned Indiana basketball media days for the Big Ten are coming up just a week away. Shocks me. So as a matter of fact, next week we'll be coming to you live from Minneapolis on this Tuesday, as well as the Monday. We'll be up there for both days. And as usual, we expect to have Coach Mike Woodson join us live. And in addition to the players that they bring, I would be really, really surprised if that is not Trey Galloway and Xavier Johnson, both seniors, both captains, both pretty much the faces of this team right now, because everyone else is transfer or young. Mackenzie Mbako, of course, a freshman. Kelly O'Hara, a sophomore. Malik Renew, younger as well. CJ Gunn and all of those guys. So these are the faces of the program. That's who I expect to see up there. And while we had an opportunity to talk to Trey Galloway at IU's media days, they had a scheduling problem, and they didn't get all of the players to us that they were supposed to. But we did not get a chance to talk to Xavier then, but we will have a chance to talk to him live on the show next week. I'm expecting. So there is that. So we'll look forward to that. Otherwise, coming up this weekend, what with an off weekend for Indiana football, what are the fans doing? Are they watching other games? Are you doing other things? Especially for those that either tailgate or watch the games, is this an opportunity for you to go out of town? My daughter goes to Ole Miss, and I'm like, oh man, I could go down. Guess what? Ole Miss has a bye this weekend. Of course they do. It always works out that way. She sent some awesome pictures, though, that I know no one cares about. But you know what? To have a chance to storm the field, that doesn't happen a lot. And Ole Miss is one of those SEC schools, man. Their stadium's full every time. The Grove, known as the number one tailgating place in the country. And when I saw that, I was watching that game, and what an incredible game. LSU and Ole Miss back and forth. LSU has a late lead, and I'm like, wow. And then Ole Miss gets the ball. And, of course, they go down and score and get a late win over LSU, which was gigantic. High scoring game, back and forth. The fans were there until the very end, which was awesome to see. And then, of course, you saw the fans charging the field, baby. So she sent me some photos, and it was fun to see that. I said, be safe, be safe. If you're on that field, be safe. So it was funny. But she said, I got off the field safe. I'm like, well, that's good. Derek says, as much as I hate to say it and even see UK win, their game against Georgia Saturday night could be an intriguing one to watch. You know what? You're not lying. I said this yesterday, Derek. If anybody listens to this show knows one thing, I don't talk about being, not liking this team or that team. Not a fan of Kentucky. Even though I try to maintain being very unbiased with Indiana, with everything. Doesn't matter. Purdue, I'm trying to always cover things as a journalist and maintain that level of you take the fandom out, and I think I've done a good job of taking that fanship out. Sometimes to the former, it's not fun. But I don't like Kentucky. I just don't. But yesterday, and I said this, and I will say it again, Kentucky's football program is a program that Indiana needs to model itself after. They are in the SEC. It doesn't matter what division in the SEC East, but they're in the SEC. They're going to play SEC teams like Indiana's going to play Big Ten teams. But they've been able to do something different. They have recruited hard, and they've gotten good recruits. They were getting good recruits. This is before the transfer portal. And they have been successful. They lost to Florida 31 straight times, 31 straight years, 3 decades. It's like Indiana and Ohio State. Haven't beat them since 86. It was like that with Michigan until they finally got that monkey off their back. Almost got the Ohio State win off their back. Daggone should have. Bad loss. But Kentucky has now beaten Florida 3 straight times. And this is in a season where Florida is they weren't coming off of, but had just beaten on national TV at a nighttime game, beat Tennessee, who was rolling. Kentucky is competitive in their conference. And that's all I'm talking about. They're competitive. Stoops has been there for 7 years and just built up the program. It can be done. I'm telling you, Kentucky is to me, Kentucky's a perfect example. And I just think that there's certain things you have to do. If you're not Penn State, Ohio State, or Georgia, Alabama, whomever, there's certain things you have to do that are different. And those things just haven't happened in Indiana. And that it starts with the right hires, and it goes from there. There's even a hire that there's a bigger hire that was made that I think in retrospect was not the right one, but that's a whole different discussion that I'm not going to get into. But it can be done. I'm telling you, Indiana can have success in football. You want positivity about it? There it is. Here it comes. They can be successful in this league. They can be successful in the Big Ten. Part of it is they're going to have to start using the NIL towards football, not just basketball. I understand it's a basketball school. It's a basketball state. The need to get the basketball rolling. I get it. I do not disagree with it. Has to happen. Indiana's a blue blood, but they are not being a blue blood. But they need to get back to that. And whatever that takes, get it. Do it. Get there. And they're working on it. Mike Woodson is doing what he can to get there. But you also have to do. I was looking at. Someone had asked a question that I try to answer statements and comments when people send them in after the show. The people that don't listen live, and there was something about daggone it. I forget the daggone question now. I just got distracted myself. But Indiana is just going to have to. Oh, NIL. A year ago, this came from a story from a publication that ranked the top 20 NIL programs. Hoosiers for Good was like 13th or 14th. That was a year ago, that's pretty damn high. Now they received an honorable mention, which put them about 22nd or 3rd from what I was remembering. Most of the programs that are in front of them are all football oriented. And that's never going to change. It's only going to grow. You would be surprised by the programs that are in front of Indiana. Now, as far as basketball, I only saw 2, and Kentucky was not one of them, but they have to be very close, no doubt. But Kansas is ahead of Indiana as far as in this poll, and as was surprisingly West Virginia. That one surprised the hell out of me. And it said that this was basketball driven. So that one shocked me. So there's still work to be done. And if Indiana wants to be successful in football, they're going to have to continue to grow their NIL, and it's going to have to involve football more. We've got lots more coming up, including Chronic Hoosier, who joins us next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and we're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Well, I think okay, Chronic, how are you, brother?
What up?
Oh, just enjoying my bye week. I don't get I wish I should get a bye week.
My bye week is coming, starting Friday.
Awesome. Where you at?
Back to the Cape San Blas.
Where's that?
It's in the ball sack of Florida. It's about an hour, 45 miles east of Panama City.
Oh, okay. So you're on the handle.
In the handle, but where there's a little nub there right before the peninsula where there's really nothing. It's just a swamp, but there's a 20-mile sandbar that goes off of Port St. Joe. And
that sounds very relaxing. Sounds very quiet.
It is everything and then some.
I can right now, I can already picture myself. You know that GIF where the guy walks out and just throws that bag chair out, sets it down to watch what's going to happen. I can see me just walking out, opening up that chair, putting it in the sand, sitting back with a stogie, maybe a book. And we lost him.
Maybe he went to get you a stogie and a book.
We'll
But
see.
when he
He'll
comes
be
back,
back.
we'll go live.
I guess I don't need to tell him that we lost him, but I will. Good question. Are there enough funds for both?
There's
All right,
internet. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Tuesday from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, of course. Beautiful out there, man. And Chronic Hoosier joining us now, man. Have you had a chance to enjoy this incredible fall weather?
Every moment I get, Jim. It's one of the few reasons I still live in Indiana.
It has been spectacular, and it's just now October, but my goodness, this is supposed to be great this week, and I'll take all of it I can get as well. I'm saying, keep delaying those 20-degree days. I'm not looking forward to that, but they're coming, but you're going to go get you some sand between the toes, so that ought to be great as well. I was talking about, right before you joined, I was talking about NIL, and because yesterday someone asked a question that I was looking up that as far how about Maryland's NIL program because of Derek Queen or whatnot, I think. And I'm like, I don't know what Maryland's NIL program is. I don't, really cover them, but they have a solid NIL program. But I started looking up any place I could find rankings, and I found one that had done it 2 years in a row. Last year, Hoosiers for Good, Indiana's official collective, was ranked like 13th, which is really high. And now they get an honorable mention, which put them about 23rd. But that's not surprising either, because the majority of these are football-powered programs that are in front of them. Some of these schools would surprise you, even Central Florida, but the two that were basketball oriented were Kansas, which is not a surprise, but let you know, hey, they're here to play every time. But the other was West Virginia. And I'm like, wow. And it specifically mentioned that it was basketball, mostly basketball driven, but they do have a decent football program. But they apparently care about basketball more as well, which is surprising. Indiana has to continue. Indiana has to stay in that mix. They can't continue to drop because Kentucky has to be very close. And then Michigan is ahead of them, but that's more football driven. But Indiana has got to find a way to where they're making this a little more football than just basketball, Chronic.
Yeah, it's interesting when you want to look at institutional priorities. Look no further than where their check receipts and where they're spending the money. It's literally the expression, put your money where your mouth is. And Indiana has done a good job of that as it relates to its basketball endeavors for sure. And I think you'll continue to see Indiana stay very, very strong in that space, simply because that's what Indiana prioritizes. That's what we have always prioritized. And that's where the appetite is for the booster spending. For all the grumblings surrounding the football program, the answer is really pretty simple, and it's the same: put your money where your mouth is. If that's truly a priority, spend like it. And we saw about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we saw what seemed to be a step in that direction when Tom Allen got his contract extension, and the raise that followed with it. And then what we have seen since has mainly been an exodus of resources, in as much as the human resources, whether it's your coordinators, whether it's your Heisman caliber quarterback, and so on and so on. Your highest ranked recruit in program history. we've seen a lot of that leaving. And I don't know that that's strictly a product of financial choices, but I think you'd probably be pretty remiss and naive if you didn't recognize there is a corollary between those two things. The reason we can't retain staff is because we can't pay commensurate with what the market's going to pay them elsewhere. Therefore you lose Kalen DeBoer and Caden Womack. When it comes to the players, it's hard telling. My guess is it's probably more of personal rewards than financial. Kids come to play college ball because they want to win. They want to be spotlighted. They want to look good. They want to further their careers. And don't get me wrong. There's plenty of guys that have made even Hall of Fame careers out of much smaller schools, less successful schools, perhaps. But quite honestly, since that extension was handed out, the football Hoosiers have been kind of going in the wrong direction. They've been backsliding. So a lot of conversation now turns to how do you arrest that? How do you reverse that? And I think money is going to be a part of it in the NIL front as well as in staff salaries. But I think more than anything, it's probably going to come down to selective personnel management. No different than coaches have to go out and recruit the best players for the program, the best fit, best talent. Indiana's got to find a way to do that with its staff now, because we're at a point where it seems like the alarms are sounding, and not the least of which from inside the building. Now that you are working with the new offensive coordinator just a couple games into the season, it seems like desperate times call for desperate measures, and firing your OC after a season and a third is not ideal. It's not a great look, and I don't know that Indiana fares better or worse for having made that decision. It seems like there wasn't a whole lot of room left. You kind of knew what you were getting with the Walt Bell offense, and let's be honest, it wasn't good enough. Quite honestly, it just wasn't. Indiana has not been particularly competitive here recently, and I don't know that change fixes anything, but it's probably better than Stacia, than doing nothing. But I think going forward, they're probably going to have to take a very hard look at how they're going about staffing this program and what they bring to the table. Because quite honestly, for the resources Indiana has put in, Tom Allen's the highest paid coach in program history. That was a sign that the administration is prioritizing it. Not so much the case with the assistants, and not so much the case with you get what you pay for here. And I don't know how much longer that's going to be sustainable, but we're reaching a point now where it's when you've got former players starting to chime in, expressing their discontent. The student body is making their voices heard. I imagine the administration is probably hearing quite a bit along those same lines from the boosters. So we'll see. But no matter what, Indiana has to they have to be savvy in who they do choose to fill these roles. And quite honestly, you're going to have to come with a checkbook that's prepared for the market you're spending in. No different than if you go out and buy a car right now. Everything's inflated. It's just the nature of the market. Or whether you buy a house, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. You're going to pay a high interest rate. Everything's more expensive. So it's going to be the case when it comes to hiring coordinators or head coaches or whomever you're looking to fill. You better be prepared to spend money, because at the end of the day, you generally get what you pay for. And I don't know that Indiana's in a position where they can go out and go for the big shiny brand names. You've got Urban Meyer's name starting to pop up in some searches, and it's just silly season whenever there's vacancies. But as silly as it may seem, that's just the market right now. And if you want a coach that's capable of getting you to bowl games consistently, or a coordinator for that matter, you're going to spend more money than you ever have spent or even considered spending before. And that's probably not going to change absent some wholesale reform in the NCAA and college athletics, which I would certainly not recommend holding your breath for. But that's just the nature of where it is. And until Indiana chooses to make different choices in those fronts, you're probably not going to get a whole lot different results, quite honestly.
Yeah. Right now, all 12 IU basketball players have some kind of deal with Hoosiers for Good. They are not all the same. And I got a question last night on one of the boards saying, I can't believe that there's no information about the NIL deals. I'm like, man, they keep that stuff quiet. I know what Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino got last year just from Hoosiers for Good. But there's other sources as well outside of that. But that was a chunk. But the chunks are going to basketball. I'm sure that Jalen Lucas was received some kind of nice deal, but they're going to have to do that again because it's going to be really difficult to hold on to some players after this season, I think, at Indiana. And I cannot imagine the NIL is being spread that far on this Indiana football program right now.
No, and that's the challenge that a lot of programs are facing. You've heard this coming from even the bluest of the blue bloods. You hear Ryan Day talking about how much money it's going to take to fund Ohio State's NIL efforts. It's no joke, man. There's a lot of cash involved here, and so far Indiana hasn't. And when I say Indiana, I mean collectively. The entire institution, the alumni, the booster class, the business class. There just hasn't been the appetite for football like you've seen for basketball. Look no different than how Indiana made its last basketball coaching change.
It's the losing that has done that.
Don't make no mistake. Apathy is toxic, and there's quite a bit of it surrounding the program, and that's probably reflected in the NIL contributions.
Absolutely.
There is,
and it's going to be difficult, almost impossible, and nothing's going to change as far as coaching staff through next season. I keep telling people that you fired. I'm like, I don't even talk about that happening because it's a $20 million buyout, and that ain't happening. I just don't see any possible way that that's going to happen. So,
and the irony of that is that's the exact war chest they put together to move on from Archie. That's to the T. That is the exact figure that they were able to put together in order to reverse course with basketball. And a lot of folks looked at that decision and said, "Yeah, look at that dude. Look at where you were going. You had to. You absolutely had to." And then you put the shoe on the other foot and you talk about those exact figures in football. And most reasonable observers are going to say exactly that. There's no way. There's no way Indiana's going to spend that much money on a football coach. Well, and yet we just did 2 years ago on basketball. So again, those are the priorities, and those are how those are demonstrated. And, until you want to change those priorities, you're probably not going to change your results. And you look at the results that Indiana's been able to achieve on the basketball side by virtue of making that change and by virtue of going all in when it comes to NIL and, how you attract the top talent here. And, part of it is, it's just the world you compete in. That doesn't mean that you're just going out and bidding on every player and that's how your roster is assembled. You ask Mike Woodson, he's going to tell you that's low on his list of why these kids should be coming here. And if he sniffs that's the reason, the sole reason or a primary reason, they're probably going to look elsewhere. But it's also just kind of now that's omnipresent in the background of these decisions is you're going to have to be able to put together a package, no different than the nutrition plan and the scholastic plan and, all the personal growth that the program pitches to prospective recruits. In this day and age, there's going to have to be a financial portion of that compensation, of that package. And, right now, when you look at the commits that Indiana is getting, when you look at the recruits that Indiana is in on, this isn't subjective. This is my personal opinion. But let's be honest, Indiana is basically bidding against MAC schools right now for talent. We're back to that. At least at the high school ranks. And that's something that Tom Allen recently said is always going to be the foundation of how they build the program. But where we are with the resources we're committing, that's the market we're shopping in. That's the pool that we're swimming in right now. And that's everything that Indiana spent the last decade plus trying to elevate itself from. And now you find yourself back in that very situation where, you look at the kids that are signing or that are high up on the hot board, and you look at who else is up there with them in the crystal ball, and you're back to competing against MAC schools again. And I doubt that changes dramatically in the next year or two, simply because Indiana's appetite for making changes really doesn't seem to be present, quite honestly. And it's unfortunate because, as you mentioned, I don't think there's going to be any changes in the head coaching position anytime soon, at least not through the end of next season, likely. And without some pretty big changes, not just there, but across the board, I don't know that it's reasonable to expect a whole lot of different results. So I would love to be proven wrong, but follow the cash, and it kind of tells you what you can expect in the future.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to be negative about the program. Tom Allen is as great a guy as you're ever going to meet. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell the truth about things. And it's going to be how difficult is next year going to be if this season continues the way it is? There was not going to be any changes, maybe some changes on the coaching staff, but that's going to be difficult. It would be looked at as a lame duck year, to be honest with you. So getting like a great offensive coordinator to come in, my only thought is the only way you get that is if they have minds on being the next head coach.
Yeah, and what kind of great offensive coordinator are you going to get at a pay scale anywhere close to where Indiana's been willing to commit?
And that's something that position has to change.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, and I think you can look at how do you address staffing needs under the current situation, how do you address player needs, recruiting needs under the current situation, and it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for Indiana to improve its stars when it doesn't change what it's currently doing or how it goes about doing that. And it's really unfortunate because, this is arguably one of the most consequential times in college football history since the inception of organized collegiate football, with so much change taking place so rapidly, whether it be the NIL world, whether it be conference realignment. It is a very, very fluid and fast moving time. And what you're seeing, when you see programs like Stanford, the most successful athletic department across the board over the last 5-10 years, and they don't have a home.
They're out on an island now,
and they're having to beg for somebody to affiliate with, and what they land on may not be there in 3 more years. You don't know. But they're just grasping at straws so as not to get swept away into the dustbin of realignment history. That's a very unsettling prospect when you look at a program like Indiana, recognizing how much football is driving the entirety of these decisions. Your priorities could be proved to be misplaced very, very quickly, in a very short order. That you may not ever even see coming, quite honestly, because let's be honest, nobody was looping Stanford and Cal into these decisions as all the programs were jumping off the Pac-12. And I'm not to say they weren't aware of it, but a lot of the teams that were left on the outside certainly looked like they got caught off guard to what was coming, and they didn't really have any good contingencies going forward. And I don't know that you can be comfortable unless you are a program that can provide value to whoever you affiliate with. And, a lot of folks have said for years, somebody's got to be your buy game. Somebody's got to be your guaranteed win. Indiana serves a purpose. And that's all well and good until, the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Penn States, etc., start looking at some of these other blue blood programs going, what's to stop us from forming our own Super League? What's to stop us from adopting an NFL model? And just breaking away from the NCAA altogether. And then, when you're a basketball only school, look no further than Georgetown. Growing up, that was a very preeminent program athletically. And then The Big East hitches its wagon almost exclusively to basketball, and it's now just an afterthought in the conference landscape, at least as it relates to revenue generation. So it's extraordinarily problematic to see Indiana in this environment with itself seemingly handcuffed, unable to move in any direction because, quite frankly, the contract that they wrote, that they put upon themselves, the obligations, and either they perhaps overvalued what they had, perhaps they never contemplated that it's not going to go swimmingly for the entire duration, and perhaps there could come a time when maybe a change is needed. And now you find yourself in a position where you can't afford to make the change, or at least seemingly you can't, without having to make some pretty significant sacrifices. So again, I'm not going to speak to the administration what their appetite is for change here, but looking from the outside in, they don't have a lot of room to move on this one, and that's solely a product of their own choosing. So it's unfortunate. Because you look at Taylor Lehman's done an excellent job with his newsletter Bite Size Bison, and yesterday he was showing efficiency stats, offense, defense, total, and what you see is Indiana apexed. At the end of the Kevin Wilson, early Tom Allen era, all those gains that have been made basically since 2012 are almost completely erased now. Indiana back to where it was about the time when Kevin Wilson started, in the very basement of the Big Ten, in the very basement of the Power Five, when it comes to just basic football competency. And Indiana is fast crashing back to that floor again. So it's too bad, because as those resources, if it continue to flow into the program, they're not getting the results. And they're not only are they not getting the results, the decline is very, very rapid here in the last 2.5 seasons. And as we were just discussing, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of hope for reversing that in the near term. So it's extraordinarily unfortunate, and it's entirely something of Indiana's own creation. So even sadder still.
Absolutely. Chronic Hoosier brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you stop by and visit, or just go to andymorehonda.com and get more to your door. Appreciate you, Chronic. Look forward to doing it again next week, brother.
I'm going to miss you next week. I'm going to be I'm going to be on a charter boat next Tuesday morning, hopefully pulling in some big old fish. But I will catch you. I will catch you the week following, man.
Sounds great, brother. We'll see you on the flip side.
Be well.
Back with more Indiana Sports Beat, including Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times right after this.
Right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Chronic's a great speaker. He's one of those guys that they get on a roll, baby. Can't stop him. That's a great background, man. That looks like just the library of Niziolek.
That's right.
Those books or
books,
movies,
video
and
games, DVDs.
Yeah. I have a stack of DVDs, and I'm trying to decide whether to keep them or just get rid of them. or they're actually CDs or DVDs. I'm not sure. I had Rob Cassidy on yesterday from Rivals.com. I'm the publisher for the Hoosier, which is Indiana Rivals, but Rob was on with us, and he spoke with Liam. He was with Liam Neely on Sunday. He was down in Montverde, Florida. And he said he still feels strongly that McNeely is going to go Indiana's way. Just saw that. Who was it? Was it Boogie Fland or Cooper Flagg that canceled a visit? Cooper Flagg canceled a visit to Kansas.
Yeah, I think so.
What is Cooper Flagg, a guard or is he a wing? I can't recall. Me too.
He's a power forward.
Okay. So
We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this beautiful Tuesday, brought to you by our good friends at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Make sure you stop by right off of I-65 on Veterans Parkway down in southern Indiana. Pizza, burgers, and beer. Mike Nizick from the Bloomington Herald-Times joins us now, Mike. And in the break, we were talking that Cooper Flagg has canceled a visit to Kansas, which, man, I'm sure the earth shook in Lawrence because that doesn't happen. That never happens. David pointing out he's a 6'11" big dude. I'm not sure if that puts more emphasis for Self to kind of come back at someone like Liam McNeely. But I was telling you that Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com was on with us yesterday. He was with Liam McNeely on Sunday down in Montverde, Florida, and he still feels that Indiana is not only the leader for him, but he said he really feels good about where they are with Boogie Fland. And I think that might come down to, I don't even know, maybe NIL just for that one, because then Kentucky may feel that they need to throw more at that to land that. But if Indiana were to land both McNeely and daggone it, Boogie Fland, that would be great. There's also Dairy Queen hanging out there. So there's a lot of big fish that are in this little pond that Mike Woodson's trying to catch right now.
Well, you got to get the first one, right? I mean, and then you can pitch the others on, this is what we got going and we got a special class. I think there's been a lot of speculation that McNeely would be kind of the first domino to fall. And I think if you lock that in, that sets you up well for the rest, because you definitely want to, sometimes guys I think are reluctant to be the first. They want to play with good talent, and they don't want to be left kind of at the altar, stuck by themselves. I mean, you see in the NBA where the guys kind of gravitate towards the teams with a superstar or two, and so I think that if you could lock in McNeely, that would certainly go a long way, and to try to solidify your pitch to the rest of the guys that maybe are on the fence between Boogie's between Kentucky and here. And you just give them more reasons, NIL would help too. But, playing with talented players, for, the year or two they're in college is a good selling point.
Yeah. And not having a commitment yet, it's not a big red flag at all. Alabama didn't have a commitment until a few days ago, and they got their first commitment. The guys are just making their decisions later because of NIL, because of all of the different offers, because of all the things they have to look through. There's just so much more for them to go through. And not only that, these programs keep coming back at these guys. Bill Self going back down to see Liam McNeely. Then, Mike Woodson has to go back and do the same. Calipari has gone up and seen Boogie Fland, as is somebody else. Well, Mike Woodson's probably going to have to do that. It's a cat and mouse game now. Not that recruiting hasn't always been, kind of that in a way. It's just increased to a much, much bigger level now.
Well, it also, it's when you're playing in, a smaller pond and going for the top, the elite group that, Mike Woodson wants to kind of sort of build his team around, which is, obviously the most talented, high school recruits in the country. They have, they could have their pick of guys that are a step below. And get those commits easier. But they're going for the elite level talent that you're going to have to compete till the very end and fight to win those battles.
Absolutely. And you mentioned getting that first one to fall, Liam McNeely. His decision is expected to come within the next 2 weeks. So Indiana fans won't have to wait much longer to get that out of the way. If it goes their way, they will just celebrate greatly. And if it doesn't, that's going to be a pierce in the side, because that has been, I hate to call it Mike Woodson's top priority because that is not fair to guys like Boogie Fland and the other high-end talent that Derek Queen that he's chasing. But they have put probably a little more resources into Liam McNeely than the others. Maybe it's just because they started recruiting him. Well, they didn't start recruiting him sooner. Derek Queen has always been there, but maybe they thought that they weren't in with him, but they've just kind of been all in with McNeely, and it would be a pretty big jolt if they don't land him.
Yeah, well, and you got to have a plan B, and sometimes that can be hard when, if they're getting signals that they think they got the guy too, that could be really challenging. And like I said, since you don't have that other recruit to sort of lean on or commitment, then other dominoes can start falling, the opposite way. So you definitely want to, recruiting is sort of a momentum game. And you definitely want to, there's nothing wrong with having to wait to get that commitment, but it can be damaging if you don't get the guy because, like I said, you're waiting for those other dominoes to fall. And then the last news that they see is, you don't get the guy that you wanted.
Yeah. And that, like I said, it's hard to say, hey, this is the top priority. And when that doesn't happen, hey, no, you're our top priority. And, it's like, well, no, whatever. But it is hard because now you have to fall back. And it's who are you chasing now? But not only that, then you're not getting what you wanted, what you needed, what you thought you needed. If you thought this was the guy, you would have been chasing him harder. But if this is the guy you think you need and don't, that upsets your talent on the roster.
Yeah, well, and I think in football, it's a more common practice, and you could give guys, and it's easier to sort of reach at a similar talent level. In basketball, it's just so different that the plan B is going to be a step down, especially when you're recruiting guys at such a high elite level group that you have to take a larger step down than you would a lot of times in football. That where I think it's easier to pitch a guy if you're your plan B, if you're offering them something better than the offers that they had. Indiana's not going to find that at the level they're recruiting. They'd have to go for guys that just aren't in that group, that are game changers or guys that could immediately step in next year, one and done kind of guys. That's not what they're going to be looking for as their plan B if they don't get McNeely.
Yeah, and I think that they do get him only because I'm going off of everything I've heard. He is just wanting, I guess, to look through things. Now, these guys make these decisions quickly. 2 weeks later, a decision is expected from Boogie Fland. And like I said, Derek Queen is not off the table. He is just thought to be a Maryland lean. If Indiana were to get all three of those, that would be as big of a recruiting class probably I hate to say that they've ever had, because that 1989 class was unbelievable. They brought in 7 guys, all of which were pretty damn good. We're talking Todd Leary and Pat Graham and Greg Graham, Scalbert Cheney, Lawrence Funderburk, forgetting the defensive Chris Reynolds, and I'm missing one, but that was a core of a team for 4 years right there. So, but this is they didn't have the rankings back then really, and this would be, as far as rankings go, if they got all three of those, the biggest class Indiana's ever landed.
Oh yeah, you mean basically the modern era, essentially, of recruiting is what you're talking about, and
right.
Because now you mentioned guys a 4-year core, this is a 1 year or 6 month core. Now they don't do it like they used to in terms of landing a guys that could be program defining for a long time. Now you're just hoping this class for 1 year gets you across the line, and then that builds to the next class, because these guys don't stay, and you want them to be successful like that, so you're constantly rotating through the top of the top.
Yes, and so, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up in football, Indiana releasing Walt Bell and Rod Carey taking over as his duties. He's just been kind of a jack of all trades, taking over the offensive line last year, now taking over the offense for Tom Allen. Part of that, I think that is, I hate to say it, Tom is so removed from the offense that I think that is a detriment to the team. When I say removed, I don't think that I'm not saying that he's not having meetings and in the meetings and going. It's his offensive background is very limited, and that is backed up by, when I forget who the coach was. He says, "Oh, I'm going to be the defensive. He's going to be the defensive head coach, and this guy's going to be the offensive head coach." Basically, shooing off the offense, and I think that really, really hurts this program. But Rod Carey's a guy of experience, and hopefully he can do what he did last year when he took over duties on the offensive line.
Yeah, it's hard. Obviously, he'll get so little time. I mean, he has the bye week, but last year when he took over, he said basically he's not a miracle worker, but how much can he change in sort of the limited amount of time that you get, limited amount of practice time that these teams have kind of during the season as well. But you're looking for some stability, especially in terms of like play calling. Obviously you need just kind of immediate improvement because it hasn't been good enough. I think the thing that you look to right away is sort of fix this quarterback situation that I think they kind of, now, botched on Saturday. And so you kind of going to try to have to reverse that and sort of, smooth that over. And I think that'll be his sort of immediate priority.
What is up next? We've got IU basketball or Big Ten Media Day coming up next week in Minneapolis. So we will be up there to get a view and be able to talk to Matt Painter and Zach Mount Edie will be there, I'm sure. Tom Izzo is always a great. He's always center stage. He's always great to talk to and draws a big crowd. Juwan Howard, I know he's been dealing with some medical issues. I assume that he'll be there. But this is always a big deal in the Big Ten basketball. A lot of excitement going into this season all the way around.
Yeah, it should be. I'm actually going to make the trip as well, so I'll see you up there, and so that should be interesting. Although, missing the Monday press conference, which would be the most interesting one of the year for football, ironically. But we'll make do and be focused on basketball up in Mini, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's just bad timing, and in this case, Indiana. What he means is Indiana has their Monday presser with Tom Allen and the OC and the DC and some players, and of course they did not have one this week because of the bye week. So the next one is next Monday when we will all be in Minneapolis. So there will be not a lot of media there. So that's with Rod Carey being his first press conference as the OC, but it's Indiana's gonna, and his first duty is going to be against Michigan. Not exactly a fun first road
on
out.
the road at Michigan. On the road at Michigan. No, it's a huge hill to climb, so it'll be tough.
What's up next for you?
Like I said, just kind of gathering stuff for Big Ten Media Days. Excited to kind of head up there. That'll be my first time covering. Well, I guess I covered one in Chicago years and years ago, but first time in a while covering it. And the women will be there obviously as well. I think it's Monday of the women and Tuesday of the men. So getting stuff ready and getting ready to go up there.
Looking forward to it. Can't thank you enough. Make sure you give Mike Niziolek a follow. Great content at the Bloomington Herald Times, and follow him on Twitter. Mike, thank you. Appreciate you very much, man.
Absolutely, sir. See you next week in Mini.
You bet, sir. Absolutely. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald Times. Like I said, appreciate Mike DeCourcy for joining us today as well on Chronic Hoosier. Most importantly, appreciate each and every one of you. Positive, negative. I love all of you. I love the discussion that we're able to have about things. And I want everyone to have a voice. That's why I try to pay attention to the comments. Derek pointing out here, he said he saw a picture from IU basketball practice on Saturday with two guys sitting out injured. One was Newton. but he wasn't sure the other guy was. Hope this isn't a trend. I didn't see it. That's got to happen, man. They're going so hard at it, and there's just going to be injuries here and there. You just hope that they're nothing serious, that they're things you get over. But that's just going to happen because they are going at it hard. You have to. And injuries are unfortunately a part of the game. You try to minimize that as much. Not weird as when Archie was here. It just seemed like during Archie Miller's tenure, the injuries were weird, and it's like, wow, what is going on? So hopefully I agree with you. Hopefully it's nothing like that. I hope that Indiana is able to get squared away, the football program, get healed up, and Rod Carey is able to tweak some things. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the quarterback. I don't know who's going to be starting in Ann Arbor for Indiana. And we'll continue to keep our eyes open for that, because I think there could be a change there. There's obviously a change that needs to happen. Sometimes you make change just for the sake of change. And this may be one of those instances. How is Indiana going to attack up at Michigan, on the road at Michigan, like Mike just pointed out? A tough place to play. But cannot thank everybody enough for joining us today. Like I said, Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, Mike Niziolek. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. RC for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.